We've finally gotten the first glimpse at DC Universe's upcoming original series Swamp Thing, based off of the comic of the same name. Premiering May 31st, the plot of the show is set to follow Abby Arcane as she investigates a seemingly deadly swamp-borne virus that's affecting a small town in Louisiana. But her investigation unravels something much more mystical and terrifying. Now, the trailer was filled with a lot of mysterious imagery, and didn't offer too much in terms of plot. So, what does it all mean? Well, for starters, let's talk about the comic that it's based on. Swamp Thing was initially created by Len Wein and Bernie Wrightston, and first appeared in House of Secrets issue 92 back in 1971. Over the years, the character has received a variation of different incarnations, with Alec Holland's iteration being the second, debuting in 1982 to capitalize on the release of the Wes Craven film of the same name. This version was written by Alan Moore and is typically seen as the most popular one. It's also the version that the show is loosely adapting, with protagonist Alec Holland being fused with a super serum he was working on when he suffered an almost fatal accident that left him to die in a swamp. It's later revealed that Alec is in fact dead, and that Swamp Thing has actually just absorbed Alec's memories and personality, and is a plant that thought it was Alec trying its best to be Alec. Swamp Thing is the latest in a long line of Earth elementals created when the green needed protection, the green being a force of nature, sometimes known as the Parliament of Trees, having existed long before humans. Now in these stories, Swamp Thing's biggest villain is Anton Arcane, who is the avatar for the Rot. We'll get to that in a sec. He's an ex-Nazi mad scientist obsessed with immortality and death, but it seems that this may not be the case for the show. Now the Rot is the opposite opposing force of the green, the life force that the Swamp Thing is the avatar of. Death, life. In addition to this, Abigail Arcane, the niece of Anton, is another character who pops up in the comics, who has inherited abilities from the Rot as well. So how much of all of that is actually being brought into the show? Well, let's break down the trailer and see. The trailer starts off with an eerie dark sequence of some young men in a motorboat in the middle of a swamp. Something from under the water approaches them and the boat gets knocked. It's safe to assume that what hit the boat could very well be Alec as Swamp Thing. Then there's a shot of a little blonde girl in a classroom lying on the floor with her nose bleeding out. While the first assumption of most might be that this would have been Abby Arcane, or Abby Cable as she's known in the comics, and perhaps this is part of a flashback, considering the casting for Abby and the color of the little girl's hair, her origin in the comics might be shifted to someone else instead. This shot is followed by a wide of a messy apartment, which features a man doing something that appears and sounds a little bit like sharpening a blade. This is followed by a shot of a blonde woman screaming who has similar hair to the little blonde girl from the previous shot, which could also reinforce the idea that Abby's connection to the Rot has been given to another character instead. Then we get a series of shots that look like an autopsy scene featuring Abby Arcane. The autopsy scenes are likely pertaining to Alec Holland, who dies early on in the show, much to Abby's dismay. We also see what appears to be Swamp Thing coming to life, sitting up on the gurney in the background, and then vines swerving their way over to Abby in a POV shot. This is then followed by several quick shots of various characters, including one of Ian Ziering, who will be playing the Blue Devil, aka David Cassidy, a stuntman turned movie star who was permanently fused with his demon costume to become an actual demon, with his powers varying over the years in the comics. Now in this teaser we get to see a shot of his Blue Devil mask. Traditionally in the comics he is a superhero but doesn't have much of a connection to Swamp Thing. The Blue Devil shots are then followed by what appears to be a shot of the Floronic Man. Kevin Durand will be starring in the show as Jason Woodrue, aka the Floronic Man, who has appeared as a villain in DC Comics for Batman and even antagonized Poison Ivy once upon a time. According to his official description for the show, I quote, "Prickly genius Jason Woodrue is a biogeneticist without equal and he knows it. Brought in to study the unique properties of a small town Louisiana swamp, Woodrue becomes fixated on unlocking the potential contained within, leading to tragic and monstrous consequences. The Floronic Man, aka Woodrue, is hired to study Swamp Thing's body, in the comics that is, so it seems likely that the government, aka General Sunderland from the comics and the Sunderland Corporation, will be involved in the show somehow, with the intention of unlocking something called the biorestorative formula via studying Holland." But back to the trailer though. This is then followed by shots of characters screaming and some overall serious horror movie vibes that don't really give much away. The teaser trailer then ends with Abby falling off of a boat into the swamp waters, an explosion setting part of the swamp ablaze, and then another shot of Abby, now out of the water, turning around and coming face to face with a fully revealed Swamp Thing, rising out of the swamp water. Of course she freaks out and has a whole horror movie monster vibe to it. So what does all of this tell us? Well, for starters, the show likely will be deviating from the typical Swamp Thing Anton Arcane conflict, perhaps putting that on the back burner for a later season, and instead will possibly be focusing on the conflict between Swamp Swamp Thing and Floronic Man. We also know that it will definitely be venturing into darker territory, much like the way DC Universe approached Titans, so not much of a surprise there. Another noteworthy fact, Matthew Cable, who in the comics is married to Abby, is in the show as well, played by Henderson Wade. Matthew is known in the comics for being possessed by Anton Arcane after him and Abby grow apart and he ends up dying, making a pact with the spirit of her uncle in order to come back to the living. How this may play into the storyline is unknown, but does leave some possibilities open, even if Anton is introduced through Cable instead. Alright, there we have it friends, what else did you notice about the trailer? Are you excited for the show? Are you going to subscribe to DC Universe to watch it? Give us a shout in the comments below and let us know. If you dug this video, spread the love, hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe to Top 10 Nerd for all of your updates on the upcoming Swamp Thing TV series. In the meantime though, thanks for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.